For 9 years, Linda Lavin was the most popular waitress in America on Alice. However, she did something that no one had anticipated when it came time to record the show's last episode. She would not appear. The network went into a frenzy. However, Linda was unconcerned. At last, she had had enough. She was tired of being pushed about, whether it was battling for equal pay or interacting with bullies on set. The truth surrounding her abrupt departure is now at last being revealed. It's even more startling than you anticipated. The narrative of Linda Lavin started in a music-filled home in Portland, Maine. Despite giving up a lucrative job to raise a family, her mother, an opera singer, never abandoned music. Song was always resonating throughout their home. Linda began performing in local concerts at the age of 5. According to family legend, she even sung "God Bless America" while standing in her cot, before she was able to speak clearly. That first spark remained unquenchable. She studied dancing at a nearby school, played the piano, and sang harmonies with her mother and sister. She sung in front of hundreds of people while wearing a pink dress during a bar mitzvah in New York when she was 12 years old. It seemed like the start of something much greater, because it was her first professional performance outside of her hometown. The support of her mother was crucial. Lucille Lavin understood what it was like to give up on aspirations, and she gave everything she had to support Linda in following hers. Linda observed her mother's weekly live radio performance from the sound booth. They sang together while they worked on household tasks. Her mother pushed her to play for visitors and set up piano lessons with a reputable local instructor. According to Linda's subsequent statements, she associated love with attention. Additionally, there was constant focus on stage. She studied drama at the College of William and Mary after high school, but things didn't go as planned. She didn't have what it takes to act professionally, according to one expert. She was devastated by that. Thinking that perhaps she had erred, she almost quit up. She did, however, get a leading part in a university play in the summer of 1958. Everything changed because of her performance. Few pupils may claim that she disproved her professor by leaving with an actor's equity card prior to graduation. She learned to trust herself at that moment, even when others didn't. Her next major move arrived in Chicago with the Compass Players, a renowned improv troupe that paved the way for the rise of celebrities like Elaine May and Mike Nichols. Her timing, humor, and quick thinking all improved as a result of being a member of that circle. It was a boot camp for artists. She took in all of the latest entertainment techniques and boundary pushing that everyone around her was doing. She gained a fresh perspective from working with such imaginative people. This influenced the type of performer she would develop into. She debuted on Broadway in A Family Affair in 1962. After only 65 performances, the show failed, which should have been a big victory. Although Linda's performance garnered attention, the production was beset by issues and quickly fell apart. Nevertheless, Hal Prince, the director, had noticed her. Later, that relationship would be important. The years that followed were difficult. In order to make ends meet while looking for work in New York, she took temp jobs and worked at department stores. The film, It's a Bird, It's a Plane, It's Superman, gave her her big break in 1966. The stage was illuminated by 2 musical acts performed by her character. She was adored by critics. Some even expressed their desire for her to appear in all musicals. Everything changed because of that one position. All of a sudden, she wasn't simply another aspiring actor. She was here. In an off-Broadway review the same year, she sang a smart song called "The Boy From," written by Stephen Sondheim under a false name. It was a hidden gem. Linda nailed every rhythm, and the lyrics were full of tongue-twisting location names and sly gags. She sang the song again at Sondheim's 90th birthday party, decades after it became a cult classic. That instance demonstrated the enduring nature of her gift. She demonstrated herself once again in 1969. In a major role this time, she portrayed Patsy in Jules Feiffer's dark comedy Little Murders, which called for significant acting skills and emotional nuance. She won a Drama Desk Award for it, which was a significant departure from the lively musicals she was accustomed to. Her control and accuracy astounded critics. Her performance reminded everyone that she was more than simply a humorous girl and opened up new opportunities. She May Move. She collaborated with Neil Simon for the first time the same year. She received a Tony nomination for her role as a fearless, humorous character in Last of the Red Hot Lovers. Her performance was praised by critics, who described it as memorable. That play marked the beginning of a lengthy partnership with Simon that would ultimately lead to even more accolades and some of the most significant roles of her career. However, success was not without its difficulties. As the 1970s approached, Linda kept getting offers for the same kind of position, the sardonic New Yorker with a golden heart. Even though she could play that persona as she slept, she was no longer excited by it. There was so much more she had trained for. She wanted to display her entire spectrum, not just the parts that others found amusing. She attempted to try out for serious parts, but casting directors believed she was too humorous. She left Broadway for a while because she was frustrated. In 1975, she finally had the opportunity to show off her classical training in the comedy of mistakes when she joined Shakespeare in the Park. She and everyone else were reminded of her true skill by her return to her dramatic beginnings. Strangely enough, humor was the thing that re-established her in the public eye. She became well known after landing the main part in the comedy Alice in 1976. She had a decision to make as soon as CBS agreed to bring it up: either stick with Barney Miller or try your hand at a different starring position. She never looked back after leaving Barney Miller. Linda had earned her big break, but the character disappeared from the show. Alice became a household name after becoming popular and running for 9 seasons. However, that achievement wasn't the result of chance. Alan Shane, the head of television at Warner Brothers, had gone above and above for her behind the scenes. Some producers questioned whether Linda was the perfect person for the show or if it would even succeed. Shane, however, had a keen eye. He was the same person who had advocated for Linda Carter as Wonder Woman and Barbara Feldon in Get Smart. He was correct when he thought Linda could carry a series. The performance touched a nerve. The audience adored Alice's passion, comedy, and grit. Everything changed when Shane called. After only 2 episodes of Alice, the program took an unexpected turn. In 1976, when the majority of sitcoms were playing it safe, it ran a plotline that addressed homosexuality. Alice discovers a charming football player is homosexual after they go on a date. Her response is clumsy, bewildered, and subtly biased. Later, Linda said that society took a century to understand what her character had learnt in 1 episode. Linda Lavin wasn't simply assuming a new television role when she joined the Alice Ensemble in 1976, she was entering a battleground. Even though the program was based on an Oscar-winning movie, the company still gave her a salary that was shamefully less than what male actors were getting at the time. Alice continued to get lower pay even when she began to gain popularity and became one of CBS's biggest successes by 1979, but Linda didn't remain silent. She threatened to walk after presenting evidence that the show was a success. Not only did that audacious maneuver alter her own contract, it paved the way for other television women to call for more creative authority and equitable compensation. She never lost her desire to do more than perform. Linda, who had directed stage plays in the past, worked very hard to direct Alice episodes. Even when she was questioned by the studio, they warned her that her lack of experience may create delays, but she refused to let that deter her. She eventually directed her debut episode in 1980. It was well received. She eventually directed 10 episodes, subtly disproving her detractors. She allowed her female co-stars time to shine, and her episodes had heart and depth. She subsequently received a Daytime Emmy nomination for a TV film as a result of her behind-the-scenes triumph. Another silent triumph stemming from her perseverance on Alice. However, Linda continued to push the frontiers of creativity. She proposed a new character when the writing team was at a loss for ideas around the 7th season of the program. Debbie Walden is a grumpy, enigmatic landlady who wears a lot of cosmetics and has an odd accent. She was hardly identified as Linda by the audience. She did it to keep the program interesting and it was successful. Fans adored the character, even if she only made a few appearances. More significantly, It provided Linda with the type of creative freedom she so much needed, something Alice Hyatt did not have. Additionally, it prepared her for more complex and dramatic roles, particularly on stage later in her career. However, the truth was the most important thing to Linda. Alice wasn't going to be another dumb sitcom, in her opinion. She hoped it might have some significance. Off camera, she insisted that the authors be honest, particularly about being a single mother. She battled for scenes in which Alice was suffering with childcare, working multiple shifts, fretting about money, or uncertain about dating again. She wanted those at home who were watching to feel noticed. Some of the most memorable episodes of the program resulted from that effort. Additionally, Alice had left the cafe before the conclusion of the series to pursue her goal of singing in Nashville. Because Linda ensured it, the ending felt genuine and well-earned. Her performance in the late 1970s earned her 2 Golden Globes. She was adored by critics. She was adored by the audience. Despite the show's 8 consecutive seasons in the top 30, she never received the same distinction from the Emmys. She received 1 nomination in 1979, but the Academy forgot about it. It was one of those occasions when industry insiders raised their eyebrows. How could someone win Golden Globes, run a popular program for over 10 years, and still be ignored? Linda refused to be defined by it. She then proceeded to the point where she was given credit, winning a Tony and receiving further nominations over time. Linda Lavin returned to Broadway in a way that no one had anticipated after more than a decade away from the theater. Her appearance in Broadway Bound, a Neil Simon play, in 1987 fundamentally altered public perception of her. For her role, Simon had composed a lengthy, poignant speech, 16 pages of unfiltered recollections, dashed hopes, and complex familial relationships. Lavin initially thought it was frightening rather than exhilarating, but she spent months honing every phrase and pause until it seemed genuine. Critics referred to her final performance as memorable. In addition to earning her a Tony Award, it helped her return to Broadway as a real performer rather than merely a television personality. She took yet another significant risk a few years later. In Gypsy, she portrayed Mama Rose, a part that had previously been performed by legendary figures. Lavin, however, took a different approach. She wasn't as forceful and boisterous when playing Rose. Rather, she made her entertaining, enchanting, and sexy. She believed that Rose had to be a well-liked person. Why would anyone hang around her otherwise? Lavin spent every day strolling through Central Park and listening to the music again in order to get ready. Her commitment was evident, but a letter she got from June Havoc, the actual Mama Rose's daughter, was more significant than any evaluation. Havoc stated, "Rose was small, sexy, and charming, just like Lavin had played her," and included a picture of her mother. No prize could ever fully express what the silent message expressed. However, not all of her roles turned out as she had intended. Lavin was chosen to play the lead in the 1992 Broadway production of Kiss of the Spider-Woman, a large, daring musical. She was sacked after only 3 weeks, despite having already learnt all the songs and movements. She had expressed disapproval of the script and requested revisions. Harold Prince, the director, advised her that it might not be the appropriate match if she wasn't satisfied. Chita Rivera took her position the following day. Despite Lavin's official protest, the harm had already been done. The theater community took sides, and although Rivera received accolades for the part, Lavin never made it back to that production. Later she acknowledged that creative differences did occur, but she felt it was unprofessional to be dismissed in that way. Rumors about what may have happened if Lavin had stayed persisted for years. Then 1995 arrived, and the events of that year would go down in Broadway history. Lavin was taking part in a 3-short play production called Death-Defying Acts. She passed out in the middle of her scene during one of the previews. The curtain came down. People went into a panic. Doctors advised her to take a break. She was dehydrated and tired. However, she returned to the stage 4 hours later, acting as if nothing had happened. Although there was a chair close by in case she needed to sit, she never did. Her reputation was solidified that evening. She was unstoppable in addition to being skilled. Her fortitude was what people remembered about her. even though her performance earned her accolades and recognition. In his years working in theater, one director claimed he had never seen anything like it. Woody Allen called that same year. After seeing Broadway Bound, he decided he wanted her in his new play Central Park West, even though he had never worked with her before. He even changed some of it to fit her pace and voice. He would sit silently throughout practices and give her fresh lines that were tailored specifically for her. They had a great creative synergy. Although the play was only intended to run for a brief period of time, spectators enjoyed it so much that it continued. And reviewers noted that Lavin made an old Woody Allen song sound fresh even after 54 years when she sang it at a Stephen Sondheim homage years later. Linda Lavin never did things the conventional way. While residing in Wilmington, North Carolina, in the late 1990s, she made the decision to play Shakespeare's As You Like It. However, she added Brazilian jazz, which gave it a twist. There was more to it than background music. She hired real musicians, choreographed the performance using bossa nova and samba, and outfitted the actors in colorful tropical attire. The entire play was transformed into something new and vibrant. This audacious move attracted attention. It demonstrated her willingness to take chances and her conviction that Shakespeare didn't have to be dreary or outdated. It was capable of dancing, but Linda went beyond. She opened the Red Barn Studio Theater in Wilmington in 2007 alongside Steve Bakunis, her third husband. It was formerly a garage. They transformed it into a comfortable 50-seat area, where some of today's most dramatic productions were performed. They hosted programs such as Rabbit Hole Doubt and Glengarry Glen Ross. Tickets frequently sell out. They even performed a piece that Linda had previously performed on Broadway, The Tale of the Allergist's Wife. It was more than simply a theater at the Red Barn. It was a love project. They attempted to improve the area by repairing neighboring houses and donating a small park. They did more than simply lock the doors when they relocated to New York in 2012. They gave the theater to a neighborhood organization for an additional 4 years at no cost. Linda was teaching at the same time. Fame and praise were not the focus of her master lectures. She concentrated on genuine passion and sincerity. Instead of sitting above her students, she sat alongside them as they performed. She thought it was both lovely and scary to sing on stage. She advised pupils to examine their own anxieties and take appropriate action. They were not overpowered by her. She offered guidance in manageable chunks. Young performers gained confidence from her instruction. She was credited by many with helping them discover their voice. She coached Kerry Washington directly, albeit there isn't any concrete evidence. Kerry had her training at the Susan Batson Studio in New York, which is associated with Linda's name. Any performer hoping to make a name for themselves in theater and television would have benefited greatly from Linda's straightforward, sensitive, and astute style. She was skilled at guiding others through that jump. She had a hallmark move in class. She would assign monologues that were impossible. These lengthy, impassioned speeches put the pupils to the ultimate test. She enjoyed incorporating scenes from Broadway Bound, the Tony Award-winning show. Linda thought you were ready if you could endure the harsh remarks, which were filled with emotional ups and downs. Even during challenging musical pieces, she worked closely with her pupils, and each time they left, they felt like they had improved. Behind the scenes, Linda's private life took some unexpected turns. In 1969, she married actor Ron Liebman for the first time. They were both theater-oriented for a while. However, Linda's career took off in 1976, after she was cast in the lead role on the comedy Alice. She became well known thanks to the show. Ron, however, continued to concentrate on the stage and the movie. Their lives began to take distinct turns. In 1975, they split up. In 1981, when Ron starred in Norma Rae, they formally got divorced. She had a much worse second marriage to actor Kip Niven. They got married in 1982 after meeting on the set of Alice, but by the end of the decade, things had taken a bad turn. Years passed throughout the protracted divorce. Despite having made very little contribution, Kip attempted to collect $6 million from Linda. He was accused of emotional abuse, wasted her money, and cheated. Ultimately, A court gave him a meager $675,000. Later, Linda noted that speaking up in court was both painful and empowering. It was different with her third and last marriage. Their relationship was controversial since Steve Bakunis was over 20 years younger. Steve earned a main part in a local theatrical performance in 1999, which is when they first met. It was jokingly called partiality. However, they had a genuine chemistry, got married in 2005 on Valentine's Day, frequently made jokes about how fortunate she was to get her hair done that day. Their love was creative as much as intimate. Together, they managed the Red Barn, engaged on community initiatives, and even gave property for a park. "If I die, I want you to know that I love you so much," Linda said to Steve in her last moments. However, despite all of the success, Linda was hit with an unexpected financial setback. She lost money in the Bernie Madoff Ponzi fraud, just like hundreds of other people. She had dependable investment managers connected to Madoff's personal network. The harm was immense when the scam fell apart in 2008, the billions had vanished. Only a fraction of what Linda had lost was regained. She should have been enjoying retirement as she was already in her 70s. She had to pick up the bits instead. She didn't talk about her difficulties. She and Steve sold their Wilmington house in secret and relocated to New York in 2012. Although they drastically reduced, it appeared to be a professional decision. They purchased 2 small Manhattan flats in lieu of a large house. Linda went back to TV to continue working. She made appearances on programs such as Be Positive, Santa Clarita Diet, 9JKL, and Sean Saves the World. Before it was finally sold and transformed into something as bizarre as an axe-throwing bar, they gave the Red Barn studio to the neighborhood theatrical community for free. It was anticipated that Linda Lavin's 1998 return to NBC as the eccentric mother and Conrad Bloom would be a major event. However, behind-the-scenes chaos soon ensued. She didn't agree with the show's creator from the beginning. She desired more attention and more jokes, and greater authority over her persona. She also didn't keep quiet about it. Scenes have to be repeatedly reworked to satisfy her. One episode required 17 distinct versions. She once walked off the set during filming, following a quarrel over the motive of her role. There was a 4-hour delay as a result. Before discontinuing, NBC only ran 9 episodes. Ironically, over 20 years later, she reconnected with her Conrad Bloom co-star on a different program. But this time there was no drama. Lavin was then requested to play his mother in Sean Hayes' new sitcom, Sean Saves the World, in 2013. Hayes is widely recognized for his work on Will and Grace. No process, no audition. All he wanted was her. They appreciated one another's abilities, and had both performed on Broadway. Hayes insisted on casting an older person even though NBC wasn't sure. Lavin became one of the oldest primetime TV leads, age 75. Although she and Hayes had perfect chemistry, the concert ended quickly. It was discontinued after 15 episodes due to declining ratings. Nevertheless, her humor and astute timing left a lasting impact. Lavin continued to drive. She walked away from comedy in 2014 to portray a harsh judge in a courtroom on The Good Wife. She didn't make it up as she went. To do it right, she watched actual judges for weeks. Her performance attracted attention. She was adored by critics. She was passed over for an Emmy according to some. She nevertheless shown that she could manage drama as well as comedy. She was still stealing scenes at the age of 83 when she joined Be Positive in 2020. Her portrayal of Norma, a boisterous and endearing member of a retirement home, became a favorite among fans. The ensemble, which included other seasoned performers, grew close to one another. They referred to themselves as the Golden Gang, and met at Lavin's house once a week for breakfast. On television that connection was visible. In Season 2, what began as a minor role was extended. Lavin subsequently stated that the part, which was full of heart, comedy and dignity, felt like the ideal way to end her career. But TV wasn't the only source of her viewership. She appeared in Netflix's Santa Clarita Diet in 2019, presenting her to an entirely new generation as a zombie grandmother. It was humorous, strange, and just right for her. she had no qualms about trying something entirely new. Fans were also saddened when the show was abruptly terminated, particularly because Lavin's brief visit had such an impact. When the world fell silent during the COVID shutdown, Lavin managed to continue performing. She began performing at home once a week on Facebook. Downstairs was her pianist's residence. As a result, they performed music every Wednesday while keeping a 6-foot distance. Thousands of people watched. She also released a jazz CD titled Love Notes and started releasing comedic sketches on YouTube at the same time. She said that it was how she remained in touch with both her audience and her craft. She played Nathan Lane's character's mother in Mid-Century Modern, which was her last job. She was considered when creating the program, and she gave it her whole self. In addition to playing, she was helping to shape the character, offering guidance to the authors, and advocating for the representation of older women. Her excitement was sensed by everyone on site. The tone was set by her. She verified its authenticity. Then the last twist appeared. Lavin discovered she had terminal lung cancer at the end of 2024. She didn't take the step that most people would have taken. Rather, she instructed the creators to incorporate her actual health situation into the narrative. She desired for her character to pass away as she had predicted. That's precisely what took place. Her character dies in a vehicle on the way to the hospital in one of the last episodes. Even Lavin's last words to her husband were a reflection of her own last moments. "I adore you, even if I die." When that episode was taped, the cast was still in mourning. They had to complete what she started, even if Nathan Lane later said they were barely hanging on. Then her actual farewell arrived. We'll see each other again at the conclusion of that same show, following the poignant sequence in which the characters get together and sing. Her voice then takes control though. An old Facebook video from the height of the pandemic shows Lavin singing the song by herself in her room. The recording lacked polish. It was honest, intimate, and heartfelt. Her voice singing those last words at that precise time. It was flawless, and ended up being her final performance. She bid farewell in the same straightforward, fearless, and memorable manner that she lived.